Please like, share, and subscribe this video to support.
2 U.S. Code, Chapter 27, Sound Recording Preservation by the Library of Congress. 2 U.S. Code, Subchapter 1, National Recording Registry. 2 U.S. Code, Paragraph 1701, National Recording Registry of the Library of Congress. The Librarian of Congress shall establish the National Recording Registry for the purpose of maintaining and preserving sound recordings that are culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant. 2 U.S. Code, Paragraph 1702, Duties of Librarian of Congress. A. Establishment of criteria and procedures. For purposes of carrying out this subchapter, the librarian shall 1. Establish criteria and procedures under which sound recordings may be included in the National Recording Registry, except that no sound recording shall be eligible for inclusion in the National Recording Registry until 10 years after the recording's creation. 2. Establish procedures under which the general public may make recommendations to the National Recording Preservation Board established under Subchapter 3 regarding the inclusion of sound recordings in the National Recording Registry, and 3. Determine which sound recordings satisfy the criteria established under Paragraph 1, and select such recordings for inclusion in the National Recording Registry. B. Publication of sound recordings in the registry. The librarian shall publish in the Federal Register the name of each sound recording that is selected for inclusion in the National Recording Registry. 2 U.S. Code, Paragraph 1703, Seal of the National Recording Registry. A. In general, the librarian shall provide a seal to indicate that a sound recording has been included in the National Recording Registry and is the registry version of that recording. B. Use of seal. The librarian shall establish guidelines for approval of the use of the seal provided under subsection A, and shall include in the guidelines the following. 1. The seal may only be used on recording copies of the registry version of a sound recording. 2. The seal may be used only after the librarian has given approval to those persons seeking to apply the seal in accordance with the guidelines. 3. In the case of copyrighted mass distributed, broadcast, or published works, only the copyright legal owner or an authorized licensee of that copyright owner may place or authorize the placement of the seal on any recording copy of the registry version of any sound recording that is maintained in the National Recording Registry collection in the Library of Congress. 4. Anyone authorized to place the seal on any recording copy of any registry version of a sound recording may accompany such seal with the following language. This sound recording is selected for inclusion in the National Recording Registry by the Librarian of Congress in consultation with the National Recording Preservation Board of the Library of Congress because of its cultural, historical, or aesthetic significance. C. Effective date of the seal. The use of the seal provided under subsection A with respect to a sound recording shall be effective beginning on the date the librarian publishes in the Federal Register, in accordance with Section 1702(b) of this title, the name of the recording, as selected for inclusion in the National Recording Registry. D. Prohibited uses of the seal. 1. Prohibition on distribution and exhibition. No person may knowingly distribute or exhibit to the public a version of a sound recording or any copy of a sound recording which bears the seal described in subsection A if such recording A. is not included in the National Recording Registry, or B. is included in the National Recording Registry but has not been approved for use of the seal by the librarian pursuant to the guidelines established under subsection B. 2. Prohibition on promotion. No person may knowingly use the seal described in subsection A to promote any version of a sound recording or recording copy other than a registry version. E. Remedies for violations. 1. Jurisdiction. The several district courts of the United States shall have jurisdiction, for cause shown, to prevent and restrain violations of subsection D. 2. Relief. A. Removal of seal. Except as provided in subparagraph B, relief for violation of subsection D shall be limited to the removal of the seal from the sound recording involved in the violation. B. Fine and injunctive relief. In the case of a pattern or practice of the willful violation of subsection D, the court may order a civil fine of not more than $10,000 and appropriate injunctive relief. 3. Limitation of remedies. The remedies provided in this subsection shall be the exclusive remedies under this chapter, or any other federal or state law, regarding the use of the seal described in subsection 2 U.S. Code, Paragraph 1704, National Recording Registry Collection of the Library of Congress. A. In general, all copies of sound recordings on the National Recording Registry that are received by the librarian under subsection B shall be maintained in the Library of Congress and be known as the National Recording Registry Collection of the Library of Congress. The librarian shall by regulation and in accordance with Title 17 provide for reasonable access to the sound recordings and other materials in such collection for scholarly and research purposes. B. Acquisition of quality copies. 1. In general, the librarian shall seek to obtain, by gift from the owner, a quality copy of the registry version of each sound recording included in the National Recording Registry. 2. Limit on number of copies. Not more than one copy of the same version or take of any sound recording may be preserved in the National Recording Registry. Nothing in the preceding sentence may be construed to prohibit the librarian from making or distributing copies of sound recordings included in the registry for purposes of carrying out this act. C. Property of United States. All copies of sound recordings on the National Recording Registry that are received by the librarian under subsection B shall become the property of the United States government, subject to the provisions of Title 17. 2 U.S. Code, Subchapter 2, National Sound Recording Preservation Program. 2 U.S. Code, Paragraph 1711, Establishment of Program by Librarian of Congress. A. In general, the librarian shall, after consultation with the National Recording Preservation Board established under Subchapter 3, implement a comprehensive national sound recording preservation program in conjunction with other sound recording archivists, educators and historians, copyright owners, recording industry representatives, and others involved in activities related to sound recording preservation, and taking into account studies conducted by the board. B. Contents of program specified. The program established under subsection A shall 1. Coordinate activities to assure that efforts of archivists and copyright owners and others in the public and private sector are effective and complementary. 2. Generate public awareness of and support for these activities. 3. Increase accessibility of sound recordings for educational purposes. 4. Undertake studies and investigations of sound recording preservation activities as needed, including the efficacy of new technologies, and recommend solutions to improve these practices. And 5. Utilize the Audiovisual Conservation Center of the Library of Congress at Culpeper, Virginia, to ensure that preserved sound recordings included in the National Recording Registry are stored in a proper manner and disseminated to researchers, scholars, and the public as may be appropriate in accordance with Title 17 in the terms of any agreements between the librarian and persons who hold copyrights to such recordings. 2 U.S. Code Paragraph 1712, promoting accessibility and public awareness of sound recordings. The librarian shall carry out activities to make sound recordings included in the National Recording Registry more broadly accessible for research and educational purposes, and to generate public awareness and support of the registry and the comprehensive National Sound Recording Preservation Program established under this subchapter. 2 U.S. Code Subchapter 3, National Recording Preservation Board. 2 U.S. Code Paragraph 1721, Establishment. The librarian shall establish in the Library of Congress a National Recording Preservation Board whose members shall be selected in accordance with the procedures described in Section 1722 of this title. 2 U.S. Code Paragraph 1722, Appointment of Members. A. Selections from lists submitted by organizations. 1. In general, the librarian shall request each organization described in paragraph 2 to submit a list of 3 candidates qualified to serve as a member of the board. The librarian shall appoint 1 member from each such list, and shall designate from that list an alternate who may attend at board expense those meetings which the individual appointed to the board cannot attend. 2. Organizations described. The organizations described in this paragraph are as follows. A. National Academy of Recording Arts and Sciences, NARAS. B. Recording Industry Association of America, RIA. C. Association for Recorded Sound Collections, ARSC. D. American Society of Composers, Authors, and Publishers, ASCAP. E. Broadcast Music Incorporated, BMI. F. Songwriters Association, SESAC. G. American Federation of Musicians, AF of M. H. Music Library Association. I. American Musicological Society. J. National Archives and Record Administration. K. National Association of Recording Merchandisers, NARM. L. Society for Ethnomusicology. M. American Folklore Society. N. Country Music Foundation. O. Audio Engineering Society, AES. P. National Academy of Popular Music. Q. Digital Media Association, DIMA. B. Other members. In addition to the members appointed under subsection A, the librarian may appoint not more than 5 members at large. The librarian shall select an alternate for each member at large, who may attend at board expense those meetings that the member at large cannot attend. C. Chair. The librarian shall appoint 1 member of the board to serve as chair. D. Term of office. 1. Terms. The term of each member of the board shall be 4 years, except that there shall be no limit to the number of terms that any individual member may serve. 2. Removal of members. The librarian shall have the authority to remove any member of the board if the member fails, after receiving proper notification, to attend, or send a designated alternate to attend, a regularly scheduled board meeting, or if the member is determined by the librarian to have substantially failed to fulfill the member's responsibilities as a member of the board. 3. Vacancies. A vacancy in the board shall be filled in the manner in which the original appointment was made under subsection A, except that the librarian may fill the vacancy from a list of candidates previously submitted by the organization or organizations involved. Any member appointed to fill a vacancy shall be appointed for the remainder of the term of the member's predecessor. 2 U.S. Code Paragraph 1723, Service of Members, Meetings. A. Reimbursement of expenses. Members of the board shall serve without pay, but may receive travel expenses, including per diem in lieu of subsistence, in accordance with sections 5702 and 5703 of Title V. B. Conflict of interest. The librarian shall establish rules and procedures to address any potential conflict of interest between a member of the board and responsibilities of the board. C. Meetings. The board shall meet at least once each fiscal year. Meetings shall be at the call of the librarian. D. Quorum. 11 members of the board shall constitute a quorum for the transaction of business. 2 U.S. Code Paragraph 1724, Responsibilities of Board. A. Review and recommendation of nominations for National Recording Registry. 1. In general, the board shall review nominations of sound recordings submitted to it for inclusion in the National Recording Registry and advise the librarian, as provided in Subchapter I, with respect to the inclusion of such recordings in the registry and the preservation of these and other sound recordings that are culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant. 2. Source of nominations. The board shall consider for inclusion in the National Recording Registry nominations submitted by the general public, as well as representatives of sound recording archives and the sound recording industry, such as the guilds and societies representing sound recording artists and other creative artists. B. Study and report on sound recording preservation and restoration. The board shall conduct a study and issue a report on the following issues. 1. The current state of sound recording archiving, preservation, and restoration activities. 2. Taking into account the research and other activities carried out by or on behalf of the National Audiovisual Conservation Center at Culpeper, Virginia. A. The methodology and standards needed to make the transition from analog, open-reel preservation of sound recordings to digital preservation of sound recordings. And B. Standards for access to preserved sound recordings by researchers, educators, and other interested parties. 3. The establishment of clear standards for copying old sound recordings, including equipment specifications and equalization guidelines. 4. Current laws and restrictions regarding the use of archives of sound recordings, including recommendations for changes in such laws and restrictions to enable the Library of Congress and other non-profit institutions in the field of sound recording preservation to make their collections available to researchers in a digital format. 5. Copyright and other laws applicable to the preservation of sound recordings. 2 U.S. Code Paragraph 1725, General Powers of Board. A. In general, The board may, for the purpose of carrying out its duties, hold such hearings, sit and act at such times and places, take such testimony, and receive such evidence as the librarian and the board consider appropriate. B. Service on foundation. 2 sitting members of the board shall be appointed by the librarian and shall serve as members of the board of directors of the National Recording Preservation Foundation, in accordance with Section 152403 of Title 36. 2 U.S. Code Subchapter 4, General Provisions. 2 U.S. Code Paragraph 1741, Definitions. As used in this chapter. 1. The term librarian means the Librarian of Congress. 2. The term board means the National Recording Preservation Board. 3. The term sound recording has the meaning given such term in Section 101 of Title 17. 4. The term publication has the meaning given such term in Section 101 of Title 17. 5. The term registry version means, with respect to a sound recording, the version of a recording first published or offered for mass distribution whether as a publication or a broadcast, or as complete a version as bona fide preservation and restoration activities by the librarian, an archivist other than the librarian, or the copyright legal owner can compile in those cases where the original material has been irretrievably lost, or the recording is unpublished. 2 U.S. Code Paragraph 1742, Staff, Experts, and Consultants. A. Staff. The librarian may appoint and fix the pay of such personnel as the librarian considers appropriate to carry out this chapter. B. Experts and Consultants. The librarian may, in carrying out this chapter, procure temporary and intermittent services under Section 3109(b) of Title 5, but at rates for individuals not to exceed the daily equivalent of the maximum rate of basic pay payable for Level 15 of the General Schedule. In no case may a member of the board, including an alternate member, be paid as an expert or consultant under this section. 2 U.S. Code Paragraph 1743, Authorization of Appropriations. There are authorized to be appropriated to the librarian for the first fiscal year beginning on or after November 9, 2000, and each succeeding fiscal year through fiscal year 2026 such sums as may be necessary to carry out this chapter, except that the amount authorized for any fiscal year may not exceed $250,000.